Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of season 5 of the Waking Up Wealthy podcast. And today we're going to flip the script on retirement. And as you might already know, one of my bigger intentions with both this podcast and my finance business is to co-create a new money system. And I believe we begin to do that by changing it from the inside. That means two things. The first being more rebels, revolutionaries, change makers, spiritual gangsters infiltrating the current economic system by participating in it, meaning that you get educated on the current system, become someone who influences it by making decisions, regulated decisions, and also by acting in integrity with your heart, with your ethics, towards being a more compassionate and humane system, right? Just by our behavior and our actions and how we run a system or a financial system, that we just create a better system. And it's not to say that it doesn't need to be broken down. It does, but I think that much like an insect that sort of like breaks out of their old skin, we create a new one. So I want you to imagine that, just have that as imagery of like you're like molting and sort of like breaking out of the shell, or like a snake sheds its skin. There's sort of a new animal emerges essentially. And then number two, right? So changing the system from the inside also means breaking down specific belief systems, attachments, and conceptualizations, whether it's about debt, wealth, ownership, what that means, consumption, retirement. And retirement specifically is something that I've been thinking about more recently since I moved, but over the last couple of years, mostly because the bulk of my work is really helping people figure out how to plan for the future and plan for a time where they're no longer working. And I've been thinking about it for myself because as I approach, right, my own official retirement age, I'm really wondering, well, what do I want my life to look like now? And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But here's what I see a lot of when I broach the topic of retirement. So I see that most people are in survival mode, living month to month. They don't have the cash flow to make any sort of investment in their future. A lot of people's lifestyles are at the same level as their income. And as their income is increased, their lifestyle is increased right along with it, making it so that they don't have any discretionary income to do anything with. And to be honest, like that's not always people's fault, right? Things are expensive. And I'll touch upon each of these things. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Some people are unable to see past the next several years, let alone 10, 20 years. When you're in survival mode, you're just building towards the next immediate task, whether that's making a repair on, making like a home improvement kind of repair, planning for your children's education, purchasing a car, right? Just sort of the next thing. And most people struggle to answer the question of how much money they want in retirement on a monthly basis when they are retired. Even when I encourage them to kind of, even do it in today's money, not even counting inflation, most people don't know what they require to live and feel like they have enough. And for those of us who grow up in a culture of consumerism, we have no idea what enough is until we have a lived experience or lived experiences that help us truly discover what you actually require to live a contented and internally wealthy life without necessarily having sort of the comfort of material wealth or resource. And over the last 30 years, let's say, and more acutely in the last 10, I've been exploring both intentionally and through unintended life circumstances what it's like to live with less, challenging myself to reduce without the feeling of withholding from myself or feeling deprived. This started, I would say, like maybe 10 years ago, where I decided not to buy any new clothes for a summer. And I love to buy new clothes. I used to make shopping at Marshall's kind of like a weekly treat. And I stopped doing it. And I was like, well, I'm still using all my clothes. All my clothes are fine, and I don't feel deprived. And I felt like I didn't even miss going to Marshall's necessarily. So, that's just one small example. Another one is making my own health products, using coconut oil as facial cream, or making my own toothpaste, or, those kinds of things, and not necessarily buying or consuming sort of like, oh, this hair product, or even not wearing makeup, or, just these little things that just have accumulated over time to add up the experience of like resourcing myself and not reaching out to, being influenced by marketing, or by, hey, you're going to look great in this and buy this, and right, the seduction of having more. And it's been an epic journey. I've felt like I've touched into pretty intense rock bottoms as well, and life situations where I expected to feel pretty uncomfortable, and surprised myself by not feeling that uncomfortable. One of those examples is when I had to evacuate the home I owned. I had to evacuate it because a tree fell into my living room, and there was asbestos in my roof. And so obviously I had to evacuate even without the asbestos. But I bounced around through 5 different Airbnbs in 3 months. And mind you, this was in the fall of 2020, where COVID was still very much a thing. And I found that I had never been happier to reduce my belongings to what I could fit in my car. And most of it was kitchen stuff. It was like my food processor, my blender, and just some of my favorite kitchen tools. I left in, what was it? It was at the end, it was mid-August, mid-August that I needed to leave my house. And so by November, I still had like summer clothes that I was wearing that I had, and then I got like a couple of sweaters from Goodwill. And I was like, wow, I've never been happier. And that experience laid the groundwork for selling, giving away all of my belongings before moving abroad. So in addition to many people not having the experience around like being able to know what is enough for them, we as a culture, as subjects or as participants in a consumerist culture, and the living inside of capitalism, being born inside of the system, are not really allowed the freedom and the room to think about what we want our lives to look and feel like. Yes, and so the experience of living inside a capitalist structure where you are groomed from very on to be a cog in the wheel of that system, and B, someone who escapes that fate by becoming rich and powerful, for example, to keep things very simple, cannot be underestimated, right? It's such a powerful and deep conditioning, especially since you are born into it from day one. You do not know what it's like to live outside of it because you never have had the experience of anything else, right? You've been fed someone else's dream that serves to narrow your perception on the choices you have. And then on top of that, we aren't really allowed the room to think, like, especially women are not, us being so attuned to what other people need and what other people want and what other people want for us, that we often sacrifice our preferences, we sacrifice our needs, we sacrifice our choices when it comes to crafting our own lives, when it comes to really thinking about, well, what do I want? What do I really want that doesn't involve taking into account everybody else's opinions, happiness, pleasure or displeasure or disappointment? And like I said, we do things for our children, for the benefit of our children, and our parents, in order to, we don't want to disappoint them. We don't want to interrupt the comfort and regularity of their lives with something that we want. So we say, oh no, we won't do this or we won't do that. And that conditioning is really deep. It takes years, even decades, to fully tune in and design your dream life, design a life that feels congruent. We often talk about designing a business that feels congruent, but then that business also needs to be congruent with the life of our dreams. And you have to do, all of that. You have to take into account how you work, not only where you work, right? What you do or in what field you work, but how you work. How much do you need to exist and live? And maybe even, where you want to live, to feel satisfied with the quality of your existence and your experiences. And every single person I sit down with, and I was once in that seat as well, every single person I've sat with doesn't know what their financial independence number is. And, again, I didn't know either, right? And your financial independence number is the number you need to have saved by the time you retire, that you'll be living off in the 20 plus years that you're in retirement, that you'll not be working, hopefully. And if you are working, you're working without necessarily needing to pay attention to the financial exchange that results from energy output, right? You're really giving from a place of pleasure, abundance, freely, not necessarily looking to get remunerated. And to calculate your financial independence number, you want to figure out how much money you need to invest or save to sustain your lifestyle without working. So step one of that is knowing your actual living expenses. So you want to be asking yourself, how much do I spend a year to live comfortably? And you want to include housing, food, insurance, travel, self-care, debt payments, kids' expenses. And I'm guessing that, if you are planning on, if you're thinking about living comfortably, and depending on when you decide to do that, if you want to do it immediately, or if you're planning for maybe 10 years ahead of now or 20 years ahead, maybe kids' expenses will be factored in, maybe they won't, maybe you won't have debt, maybe you will. So you want to do all of those calculations. And do you expect those expenses to go up or down in retirement once you stop working? So step two would be deciding your withdrawal rate. This is the percentage you'd withdraw from your investments each year. And the most common rule is 4%. So this is based on historical averages. It means you withdraw 4% of your investment each year, and your money is likely to last 30 plus years. But you can also use 3.5% to be more conservative, or 5% if you're okay with more risk or have a shorter retirement. So step three is to use the formula. So the financial independence number equals your annual expenses plus your withdrawal rate. So with the 4% rule, let's say your annual expenses comes up to $80,000 a year, right? So you divide that, by 4%, which equals $2 million. And I've done this in other episodes. I just thought I'd bring it in again. So you don't need to dig around. So that means you're going to need $2 million invested to live on $80,000 a year indefinitely. And then there's an optional step 4. You want to adjust for inflation and lifestyle. So I strongly suggest you adapting or adjusting for inflation, because inflation is a real thing. And when I calculate these numbers for people, when they come up with a number that feels comfortable for them, that often doubles 10, 20 years from now. So you want to definitely account for inflation. So you want to be adding 3% per year if you're accounting for inflation. So, some of the questions you want to ask yourself is, do you plan on living more luxuriously later on? Do you want to travel more? Will medical or family expenses increase? So those are all the adjustments that you're wanting to make in addition to inflation. So I'm winding around a little bit because I want to provide both a practical value in this podcast. In other words, I want you to at least walk away from this episode with your financial independence number. And on the more conceptual side, I want you to really begin redefining retirement for yourself, redefining what that means for you, and really beginning to think about and ask yourself, what do you want your dream life to look like? And what is often sold to you as your dream life is sitting on the beach. And what is often marketed to you is sitting on a beach. And it's funny because the pictures that I've been posting on my social media are actually of me sipping a freaking coconut on the beach because this is what people do here. So in a way, I feel kind of funny saying that because this is actually what my life looks like. But what is sold to you is sort of this idea of doing nothing, of really just sitting around and doing nothing. And I want to kind of shift that for you today. When you think about it, retirement in and of itself is a totally boomer concept. And the idea being that you work for an employer, meaning that you're creating someone else's dream during the most vibrant and productive years of your life. And then once they've used up your life force, then they put you out to pasture, right? And it's like, okay, we're done with you. Here, you are released from bondage. And then adding insult to injury, then you walk away with a 401k instead of a pension. So essentially, they've garnished your wages for 40 years so that you can pay your own pension in the future. That's some disturbing shit right there, okay? So just to give you a little bit of backstory on how that switch happened, like how people used to just stay at one job, stay for the pension, stay for the benefits, and then it shifted to 401ks and people were investing in 401ks, and then all people had were their 401ks. So let me give you a little bit of historical context for that. So here's the educational piece. Before the 1980s, most retirement benefits came in defined benefit pensions, where employers guaranteed a set of like a certain amount of monthly income in retirement. And the responsibility for saving and investing was entirely on the employer. And there was like a loyalty between the employer and the employee for that reason. And in 1978, Congress passed the Revenue Act, which include a provision called Section 401k of the Internal Revenue Code. And originally it was designed to clarify tax rules and bonuses and profit sharing plans that let employees defer income like stock options and bonuses and things like that. And the intention wasn't to create a new retirement plan, but that's what ended up happening. So Ted Benna, he was a benefits consultant. He masterminded the 401k thing. He realized that employers could offer a tax-deferred savings plan where employees could contribute part of their wages before taxes. And he helped a company implement the first 401k style plan in 1981, and that allowed employee contributions with employer matches. So he designed that whole thing. And the IRS they approved this new interpretation of that 401k provision, and employers quickly jumped on that because it kind of got them off the hook from having to provide a pension. So that basically cut costs, it reduced liabilities like pension liabilities, and it reduced costs to the company. And they basically phased out the whole pension thing in favor of 401ks. And employees also like to have more control over their investments, although I would say that nowadays most employees have no clue as to how their money is being invested, let alone the ridiculous fees around having 401ks. People don't know about the fees and talk about other types of fees, but they don't realize the fees they're being charged. And 401ks are now, as you probably imagine, the primary retirement savings vehicle for most US workers in the private sector. And the problem with 401ks that people are putting most of their eggs in that one basket without really considering the impact of taxes, right? Because these are all tax deferred monies. This is when you pull out that money in retirement, you're going to be having to pay taxes on it. And in addition to having had to pay for your own pension or pay into your own pension, the government is then going to take a third of it. They're going to take a third of it. Right now, the max tax is 32%, but we don't know what that's going to look like in, right, 20 years, 10 years. And that for me is absolutely criminal. The fact that you've had to pay for your own pension and that the government is going to take a third of it when you start to pull that money out in like the most supposedly like the years of your life where you're supposed to be resting and relaxing, that is like, wow, that's freaking unacceptable. And what if taxes are like 50% in 20 years? Like, we don't know that. Like currently things are like, we don't know what's going to happen with taxes. And there are currently laws being passed that we have no idea what the impact is going to be tax-wise. So anyway, back to the concept of retirement. So here's a breakdown. I wanted to offer you a breakdown of 7 reasons why retirement is an outdated concept and what's replacing it, with some questions of reflection at the end. So please listen until the end. So number one, like I said, retirement is designed for boomers, and even earlier than that in the earlier 20th century, like when life expectancy was around 60 or 65 years old. People are living relatively healthier and longer lives, usually about 20 or 30 years more. So that's why, side conversation, long-term care has become an even more important thing to integrate into your financial plan. And oftentimes people look at me confused as to why I'm talking about long-term care to someone who's in their 30s and 40s. And it's because like, yo, this is going to matter. Like this is a real thing that you need to plan for, because the cost of that is prohibited. If you are in your 50s and if you have a parent who's in the process of retiring, or if you have a grandparent who is going through, maybe looking for some type of elderly care, what a big deal or what a big impact this is having on your parents. Maybe you are experiencing this yourself with your elderly parents. And lots of boomers especially have not thought about long-term care because their whole work culture, the way they were raised from like, even from a developmental standpoint, like developmental wounding, they have been raised in a way that is hyper independent. They think they are indestructible, and so they can never even imagine themselves being vulnerable enough to require long-term care. And so it's really hard to overcome that conditioning when meeting with those folks. All right, so 2, retirement assumes a linear life path. For example, you get educated, you work for 40 years, and then you stop working. And that's not how most people live their lives. Life is nonlinear, as you might have noticed from your life. People shift careers, they start businesses later in life, they start multiple businesses, they stop a business, they start another business, they get education at different phases. And number 3, retirement also ignores purpose and fulfillment, which is becoming more and more important for every generation following the boomer generation. People, and especially young people, meaning they crave more meaning. Young people, younger generations are craving more meaning. People are becoming more spiritual. People are using work as a source of identity, not subsuming all of their identity into work, but it is one facet of their identity out of many aspects of their identity. And it is part of their contribution and purpose as well. People want to have their work feel like it's part of their soul alignment. And the old retirement myth is once I stop working, I'll be happy. And that is just not the case now. People say, I want my work to fulfill me. I want my work to nourish me and to make me feel alive, not take away from my aliveness or detract from my aliveness. Many people feel lost or depressed after retirement because they lose the structure, the community, and the purpose, and they essentially lose their identity in a lot of ways and have to start from zero. And people are not willing to do that now. People want to experience that happiness in the present moment with the work they're doing now. Number 4, retirement is financially unsustainable for most people. So it's a really sad fact that many of the financial independence numbers I come up with, and even the number that we came up with during this episode, which was 2 million, it's not lower than 2 million because most people don't want to live off $80,000 per year. They want to live off a minimum of $120,000 a year. And as I mentioned, there are fewer pensions than ever before. There's also a very heavy strain on Social Security. And I don't even calculate Social Security in my retirement income formulas because we don't even know if it's going to be there. And I'd rather have people create their own sources of income, create their own pensions independently, rather than rely on collapsing structures. Then you have healthcare. Then you have living expenses going up, making it so that you need to save more now in order to live relatively comfortable later. So the question becomes, how do you fund 20 or 30 years of not working when you might only work for 40 years, right? Number 5, retirement also perpetuates a scarcity-based mindset where you're having to hoard money for a future that's not guaranteed. So boomers were willing to delay joy, but young people, like I said earlier, are not willing to postpone their dreams until age 65 when they don't have the physical health and wellness. Maybe they do, maybe they will, but nothing's guaranteed, right? We may not have the physical wellness and the mental wellness to fully enjoy life, right? When we're 65, our bodies our bodies do age. Even though we're incredibly healthy, our bodies do age. And I became aware of this as I started to plan other people's retirements, and through my own embodied wealth work, I became aware of the fact that I was 50, 51 years old, and that I had about 15 more years to really live the best life I could possibly live in a body that still had the flexibility to have some more intense physical experiences, like jumping out of an airplane or going, doing some other extreme sport, or surfing or kite surfing and doing any of those things. And because I had my kids at 38 and 39 years old, I wanted to be able to provide those experiences as soon as possible. So the new paradigm is to create a life that you don't need to retire from. And you've probably heard this many times before. So the idea being that you can enjoy life, you can build wealth, and contribute to society with a sense of purpose. So number 6 is entrepreneurship and living a spiritual life has changed the game. So entrepreneurship for many people has provided, at the very least, time flexibility where you can choose the rhythm of your day and create work that's aligned with your talents, with your energy level, with your capacity. And I want to say something about financial freedom here, because financial freedom doesn't necessarily equal not working. Financial freedom means the choice to rest, to pivot, to create, to play in ways that are in step with your energy signature, with your desires, with the phase of your life that you're going through, with your nervous system capacity, whatever that happens to be. And when you think of it this way, work becomes something sacred. It doesn't become this thing you do and that you like, it's a toil, it's a burden. Work is sacred, work is purposeful, work is life-giving, work is it becomes an extension of who you are, an extension of your life force, and maybe even your dharmic purpose. If you live and lead and work from a place of mission, then there's no real end point to that. There's no necessarily retiring from that. Number 7, the future is cyclical, not linear. So as we become more attuned to the natural world, as we dissolve our separateness from nature and listen to our own internal rhythms, whether it's a moon cycle or your menstrual cycle or your cycle of play and rest, we have become more aware that we don't need to move in linear ways. We can recognize just from the way our life has moved and even how we heal and grieve, none of that is a linear process. That all happens in cycles and in spirals, right? We come back into places of healing where we touch back into places that we've touched into before, but we come at them from a different perspective. And there are also phases and seasons in our lives, even in our season of our relationship to money. Maybe there are seasons where we work more, other seasons where we take time off. There may be times in your life where you have to step away from being employed to raise your children or to provide care for an elderly parent. There may be seasons where you step away to travel or engage in spiritual work. I've been meeting lots of people who maybe end businesses to world school for a year, people who end or pause businesses because they become aware that they need to heal something and then they start other businesses. And of course, there are seasons when you invest a ton of energy into building a new business, a new venture. And true wealth, includes time flexibility. It includes freedom, energy sovereignty, emotional fulfillment. It's not just a nest egg. So thinking about that, right, taking all of that into consideration, these 7 ways that I want to flip the script on retirement, I want to leave you with a few questions that you can reflect on. So number 1, first question, what did you learn about retirement growing up? What relationship did your parents have with retirement? And if you're old enough, how are they experiencing retirement now? What did you observe as they were moving through, as they shifted into that season of their life? Number 2, how do you want your life to look like at 50, 60, 70, and 80 years old? Write it down. Write it down and maybe, do a meditation where you imagine yourself at 80 looking back into your 40s, 50s, and 60s. There have been studies done about like regrets of the dying, right? I think there was a book that was written about people wish that they had worked less and been more present in their lives, right? So when you are thinking about that, right, consider that same perspective for yourself. And when you are calculating your monthly desired income goal, for example, what kinds of things do you want to be doing at 50, 60, and 70, 80 years of age? Do you want to travel? Do you want to be gardening? Do you want to be do you want to be stewarding land or drinking lemonade on your porch? I often joke with people that like when you're, the lifestyle, when people tell me that they want to live off $5,000 a month, I'm like, okay, then you're going to be drinking lemonade on your porch. You're not going to be doing anything but sitting at home and drinking lemonade, which some people prefer to do, and that's fine. But I say that jokingly as like, okay, you're not going to be doing anything. You're not going to be going on any adventures. You're going to be at home. So question number 3, do you want to stop working or do you want to stop doing work that drains you? Some people are really focused on retirement because they don't enjoy what they're doing right now. They're looking at retirement as a way to escape the golden handcuffs. So is that you? Really ask yourself that question. So number 4, so as a piggyback on that third question, if you're doing work that's draining you, what would be work that fulfills you, and how much permission can you give yourself to go in that direction? How much permission are you willing to give yourself? And who are you afraid of disappointing when you do give yourself permission, when you think about giving yourself permission to go in that direction? Question number 5, how has this episode shifted your idea of retirement and building wealth towards retirement? If you've had a light bulb moment or an aha moment, I'd love for you to share it in the comment section of social media. When I share this, I want you to maybe share your reaction in a story on Instagram or on Facebook and tag me in it. I'm sending you so much love, and I want to invite you to set up a tailored financial plan that can answer some of these questions. And the goal is to provide you with a personal money system that can support you in creating a life that feels satisfying and fulfilling to you right now. And of course, this is complimentary, and the link is in my show notes always. And of course, if you want to join me in being one of the disruptors and one of the rebels and revolutionaries that is recreating, or not recreating, but disrupting and reimagining a new financial system from the inside out, I've also included an application in the show notes as well. All right, sending you so much love, and I'll see you on the next episode.